Okay, so as you may have guessed from the title, I am reading. It's not Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Thus far, it has me very conflicted in my emotions. I know it's a really successful book, more than 5 million copies book sold. I don't trust Reese. Reese, I don't trust you. It's not focusing. God, you can hear it. Reese, I don't trust you or your book club because all your books read the same. But Delia Owens, I'm on page. I'm still not done, by the way. So I'm going to finish this and then I'm going to recapture my experience. But on page 300, chapter 46, King of the World, and I want to say it has not been the best book. I feel like it's directed toward women. I feel like even though it is a great book, it's really pretty. I do also want to say, written by Delia Owens, that it's not very well written, is it? I would love for her to write poetry. She uses metaphor and simile extensively throughout the narrative of this book, which sometimes can take you away from the actual storyline. And if you add that the pacing is really weird, you will find that the reading experience can be quite slow and or boring. And I say the pacing and the reading experience, and I describe them as weird, because from the very beginning, the book is divided into two timelines. You get the past and you get the present, or past and future, dare I say. We get the past being coming of age, celebration of nature, romanticizing life, a young girl, Kaya Clark, growing up. And then we get the future, which is true crime and mystery and darker. I like what it symbolizes, okay, that life gets darker as you age. I like what it symbolizes right off the bat. So she's a great writer in using similes and metaphors and poetic devices, but it disconnects you a lot, especially because the past is very well written, but the use of metaphor takes you away from the actual storyline. And when the past starts to get boring, Delia Owens, the book jumps from the past straight into the future, next chapter. And it's like 1954 and straight into 1969. It's set in that time period, and she jumps straight into that. And right when the future starts to get interesting, we jump right back to the past. So it starts to get really weird, and it's really weird to get into it. And it's also a very slow read. It's not something that you can read in a day, because you just cannot. You get tired really quickly, or you lose sense of what you're actually reading. Then again, it is a really beautiful read. It's very visual because of her use of poetic devices. Again, I celebrate that. I support that entirely. I use that in my own writing. And thanks to Miss Delia Owens, I will not be using that anymore. She is the co-author of 3 internationally best-selling non-fiction books about her life as a wildlife scientist in Africa. She holds a BS, a Bachelor's in Science in Zoology from the University of Georgia, and a PhD in Animal Behavior from the University of California, Davis. Again, you can tell that she knows what she's writing about. Every single detail, you're actually transported into the world of Kaya Clark and South Carolina just because of how visual the book is as a whole. I'm just gonna read one sentence. I'm gonna open a random page. I'm gonna read a sentence from page 107. Jake hunched in a corner, too scared to move, but a mortar exploded yellow-white just beyond the hole, shattering the bones of his left leg into fragments. When the soldiers tumbled back into the trench, dragging the sergeant, they assumed Jake had been hit while helping the others rescue his comrade. He was declared a hero. No one would ever know except Jake. It's just written so... It's so visual. Jake being Kaya's father. It's so visual. And you cannot help. Also, the narrator, it's third person omniscient narrator. The narrator knows everything. And it's really psychological as well. You get transported into the mind of Kaya. But again, the pacing, main critique of the book. When the past starts to catch up to the future, that's when the book gets interesting. And I say that happens in page around 250? Yeah, 250 or 240 is when the past starts to catch up to the future. When the 1950s slowly meet the 1969, 1970 timeline, that's when it starts to get interesting. But other than that, this book right here, I just had a cup of coffee. I shouldn't have had a cup of coffee. But this is her first novel, so and I still have 100 pages to go, and I will record when I finish the book. But it's psychologically, you can do a psychological analysis on Kaya Clark because it's so psychologically impressive and psychologically, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm trying to think of a word. You get impressed, but no, it's so astonishing, or it's so interesting how Owens is able to represent Kaya Clark's life and how she navigates whatever challenges she may have or she encountered throughout her life. Again, pacing being my main critique so far, and that I had to endure 250 pages for it to actually get interesting. But now that I endured 250 pages and on page 300, I can't put it down. It's addictive. I just keep going because I want to know where the story leads, and I want to know what happens. I'm gonna finish it. I am. How many pages does this have? 350, 400? It's worth it. I am gonna finish it. Also, I heard the Taylor Swift song and I heard this movie about this book. I don't know if I would watch the movie because the book is very visual, but I did listen to the Taylor Swift song. Did Taylor even read the book? Taylor's a great writer though, so maybe farther along in the next 100 pages is where she found her inspiration for the song, and is where everything will click. But we'll see. So I just finished the book, and I'd like to kind of elaborate on where I left off. I'd like to carry on and say that my theory was correct. Taylor Swift did in fact base her song off of the last 100 pages of the book. The song Carolina by Taylor Swift was not written on the first 200 pages of the book. It has nothing to do with celebration of nature, coming of age narrative. In fact, it is based on a murder mystery. The ending is so beautiful. Once you get to the last 100 pages, the tension, the way she writes, and the fact that this is her first novel is impressive. And I'd like to separate Where the Crawdads Sing and Kaya. Kaya being the narrator, of course, the main character. Because her story and Where the Crawdads Sing are two separate stories. In her story, she's the main character and she is the sole character in her story. But in the book, she is in the book, I can't get this. In the book, she is the main character, but there are also side characters. But in her life, there are no side characters in her life. But in the book, there are. In the book, you have Tate, you have Jumpin, you have Jody, who comes back later. You have a lot of people that in her life she doesn't consider a part of her life. All the men in her life have disappointed her, and it's just such an interesting read into her psyche and the psyche of a woman who was so isolated, and to get an insight into the duality of, yes, at the beginning she was told by her ma and Mabel, who becomes sort of her ma, her mother figure, that women should travel in packs and the women are stronger together. She tells herself that she wants more friends, but women friends. She wants girlfriends, and she wants a whole experience. She tries to convince herself of that, but as she grows older, she realizes that, like, what if I was trying to convince myself of that, and I don't want that. I want to be left alone. That's all I've ever wanted, to be left alone. And there's a really powerful scene in one of the last 3 pages, what am I saying? One of the last, page 350, one of the last 10 pages of the book, where Jody takes her home after the murder trial, and she is declared not guilty. And he says, he says something like, I don't want you to use this to further isolate yourself from this town, like to hold it against the town. And she's like, I've lived alone almost all my life, not for 2 months, and I didn't think, I knew a whole town was against me. Kaya, don't let this horrible thing drive you further from people. It's been a soul-crushing ordeal, but this seems to be a chance to start over. The verdict is maybe their way of saying they will accept you. Most people don't have to be acquitted of murder to be accepted. I know, and you have every reason in the world to hate people. I don't blame you, but that's what people don't understand about me. I never hated people. They hated me. They laughed at me. They left me. They harassed me. They attacked me. Well, it's true. I learned to live without them, without you, without Ma, without anybody. And that became her motto throughout her life. She became an independent woman, and I would like to sort of not retake, but remove, or yes, a statement I said in the first half of the video. I said that maybe this was a book directed for women, or that caters to women, and that maybe, because I'm a man, I didn't resonate with it as well. But then I thought to myself, what if the book does not cater to women, but because it has a female protagonist, I think it caters to women? And maybe as a man, I've been led to believe by society that everything that has a female protagonist is automatically catered toward women, e.g., when I was little, I wouldn't see episodes of Hannah Montana because that was a show for girls. I watched Jake Long, or I wouldn't see That's So Raven because it was a show for girls. Now you see? Because they have female protagonists. And I came to terms with that because I thought, what if I replace the main character in this book, Kaya that is, with a man? Would I still be thinking this is a book catered toward women? It's not a book catered toward women. It's a coming of age narrative, and if it was replaced by a guy, I would not be thinking that at all. So I retract my statement because I was in the wrong, and I realized that now. It 100% deserves a New York Times bestseller. I still wonder why the pacing was so weird. I guess Delia Owens wanted to build tension, which she did. And maybe it was sort of a parallel thing because the marsh is so intertwined that it builds tension, and she tried to do that literally. But it took me away from the narrative. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I enjoyed it as much as I could have enjoyed it if it didn't go back and forth so much. It's as if the book was edging me, and right before I was about to come, it just took me away and back. But I must say, toward the end, it really got better. It really did get better. And it's such an interesting read for Psyche. Would I read it again? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It does make me think the association that I established with Taylor Swift, and now that I read the last 100 pages of the book, and how Taylor wrote her song about the murder aspect of the book, it makes me think of the direction that the movie went in, and how I think that if the movie went in the direction of just a murder plot, I think that it absolutely disregards the complete basis and complete thesis of the book, which is a girl that was forced to live in isolation, and that by the end she decides to live in isolation because the only one she can rely on is herself. She is herself. She's fine with that. She was not fine with that, but she is. She was until she died. And that's quite a beautiful thing if you read into it philosophically. I would recommend this to anyone who's interested in psychology. Such an interesting read, psychologically again, philosophically again. My critique, again, for if it was catered for women, I'm not majoring in gender studies. I take it back. It's not catered toward women. It has nothing to do with feminism. And it's catered toward everyone. It's a great read. It's beautifully written. It's very vivid. And it just completely transports you into a book. I'm going to read some of the reviews in the back. I thought that I ended with this and see how much I agree with it. The New York Times book review. Owens here surveys the desolate marshlands of the North Carolina coast through the eyes of an abandoned child, and in her isolation, that child makes us open our eyes to the secret wonders and dangers of her private world. This is very vague. I completely disagree with the New York Times book review. It disregards the psychological aspect of the book, which I think, the novel, which I think is really important. I think that analyzing and having analyzed the book, the murder plot of it is the most interesting and marketable aspect of the book. It should be mentioned, especially in the New York Times. Barb Entertainment Weekly, reminiscent of Barbara Kingsolver. I guess so. People Magazine, stepped in the rhythms and shadows of the coastal marshes of North Carolina's Outer Banks, this fierce and hauntingly beautiful novel centers on Kaya's heartbreaking story of learning to trust human connections, intertwined with a gripping murder mystery revealing savage truths and an astonishing debut. It is an astonishing debut. Owens went all out. Stepped in rhythms and shadows. Again, I agree. Fierce and hauntingly beautiful. I agree. Kaya's heartbreaking story. I don't think it's heartbreaking. I think it's at no point in the story, and I say this, it's so interesting the way it was written. No point in the story did I feel sorry for her the way it was written. It made me angry for her, but I never felt pity for her. Her father was a drunk, her mother abandoned her, Her siblings abandoned her. No man in her life, no person in her life stepped up, man up for her. And I never felt sorry for her, not once. Not a single time did I feel sorry for her. Reese Witherspoon. I can't express how much I love this book. I didn't want this story to end. She's telling me absolutely nothing. Real simple. Owen's gorgeous novel is both a coming-of-age tale and an engrossing whodunit. It was so satisfactory reading that Kaya had done it. I'm just gonna put it out there. I wanted her to do it, and the fact that she did it, marvelous writing. She gave us. Owens knew what she needed to give us, and she did. It was, Southern Living, the new Southern novel, a lyrical debut. Lyrical, great word to use to describe this book. Indeed, very lyrical. Alexandra Fuller, author of Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight. A lush debut novel, Owens delivers her mystery wrapped in gorgeous lyrical prose, a magnificent achievement, ambitious, credible, and very timely. Very timely for what? But it is very ambitious, magnificent achievement. It is very lush too. Again, would I recommend this to everyone? I'm not sure I'd recommend this to everyone, and if it's your first read, why am I this is a spoiler book. This is a spoiler review, like I'm spoiling everything. She murdered Chase Andrews. What I'm trying to say is, don't read the book if you're just starting to get into reading. It can be quite tiring to jumping back and forth. If you have any idea of why the pacing was so off or what she was trying to do, she was building tension, she was leading up to something, she was climaxing it. I get it, that was the point of it, I got it, I felt it, especially when the verdict was being delivered. I felt it as well. But beside that, what was the point of it throughout the whole 366 pages of the book? Besides that, I would like to know why was it present, and that's it. I think so. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me rambling about Where the Crawdads Sing. I will not be watching the movie because if I think that the movie is what I think it is, then I think the movie completely ruins the experience of what an incredible book this has been. And out of 10, this has been an 8.5 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. Amazing.